Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Mickish. I am the founder and mental fitness instructor with 40 Fit Mental Fitness based in St. Paul, Minnesota. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining me this morning. This session is specifically for HR and business leaders to really explore the what, why, and how of incorporating a mental fitness strategy, a mental fitness program into your organization. That really supports everything that you're doing as a business leader, as a manager, as a human resources professional, and just really as a human being in general. So inside and outside of the workplace. So we'll dive in here for the sake of time. I know busy people, often have limited time and no need to add more stress to that. So we'll try to keep it to 30 minutes here and we'll kind of plug on through. I like to use this image of me as a kid just as an initial introduction, because we base our perceptions on what we see, what we experience, and really to raise awareness about our nervous system and what's going on inside of us. This is me sitting on a pumpkin with my sister at our childhood home in Fargo, North Dakota. And that nervous system that's in that little kid is the same nervous system that has developed and been influenced and adapted and evolved within my lifetime up to this point. So that same nervous system, that amygdala, that unconscious nervous system is still operating and functioning inside of me. And we'll discuss why that's so important to know further into our conversation here this morning. I'm also a certified LGBT plus business enterprise, but that does not mean that you individually have to identify on the LGBTQ plus spectrum for this to apply to you. This applies to every human being, however you identify, whatever your cultural background, your life experience, your belief system, any of that. If you have a brain, this applies to you. All right, and I just want to give a plug for my book. So everything that we're talking about today, and then some, I really tried to capture and elaborate in my book called My Brain Can't Poop, a mental fitness guide for humans. That's, it's supposed to be a little tongue-in-cheek, add a little humor to something that can be very complex, very personal, and quite sensitive for a lot of people, but really just to think about it in non-judgmental terms, that this is really about understanding yourself as a human being, and your neurology, your neurochemistry, and everything that operates to influence and manifest into your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Really the outcomes in your life. So as I like to say, when we dismiss or deny the function of the brain, we prolong the cycle of dysfunction and pain that so many of us are experiencing, that is compounded by stress that's really difficult to navigate when we don't really have the tools and we don't have the understanding of how to do that in a healthful way. So, covering brain health, brain development, mental function, neurology, neurochemistry, neurodiversity, motivation, and of course, reinforcement that makes us want to repeat behaviors. It reinforces those neural pathways. And sometimes the unhealthful neural pathways get reinforced, and that can make them really hard to change and heal and adapt. So also wanted to make you aware that my book is available on Amazon in print and ebook format. If you are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can access the ebook for free. There's also an audiobook on most podcast platforms. Key objectives for today, and really with mental fitness programs in general, are understanding what fitness really means. We've been kind of told and sold one definition of fitness, but it's really much broader than what you might think it is. What influences motivation and behaviors? Again, neurologically. Why focus on brain health and neurodiversity? And then how to practice mental fitness. So getting down to the brass tacks of how do you implement the practical tacticals of finding those practices that work for you. It's never one size fits all. So they may not have the same impact on different individuals, depending on your neurology, on your physiology, your body chemistry, and what you need as an individual. So we'll talk a little bit about the practices, but that's kind of a whole separate discussion in itself. So when I formed 40 Fit Mental Fitness, it was really intended to break that fitness paradigm that we think of just physical, just our muscles, just our neurology from a body movement perspective, but really getting deeper on neurology from a mental health perspective. So using a very similar framework that's used in physical fitness, applying that to brain health, mental fitness, and mental health. So really, what are those building blocks and how do we start incrementally maintaining our mental health, our neurological health, our brain health? That is not about starting at strength and endurance. So obviously that's a lot of times the goal. We want to be strong, we want to endure, we want to build resilience, all those great things, but really understanding that whether you are walking into the gym for the first time or you're approaching mental fitness for the first time, that first step is balance. And really understanding that that is being aware of your nervous system, really assessing what does your brain and body and your nervous system need? Where are you at? What kind of support do you need? And just developing that awareness in general that then can build that neurological foundation and structure that you need to build on top of. It's basically like an architect would build a building. You need a stable and solid foundation. If you just build on an unstable foundation, it's going to be more susceptible to damage and just instability. So really looking at the foundation of where are we starting and what do we need with the nervous system that we have. And then building on that with flexibility. Again, I talk about these in much more detail in the actual programming, but understanding just the importance of, again, challenging yourself, having moments of rest, having moments of challenge, but making them healthful, really adapting and developing that flexibility that allows you to push yourself a little bit and then come back to rest so that you can recover. So again, the importance of rest and recovery, that is really the growth phase. In American culture especially, we want to skip this. Only so many hours in the day. Nobody has time for rest. You got to work, work, work. Rest and recovery is the growth phase. That's where everything is rebuilding and readapting and developing. So the absolute critical importance of rest and recovery, that ultimately gets to strength and endurance. Strength being how much stress can you take on and being aware of that. What are your parameters? When to say no, when to seek a spotter. So strength isn't just taking on the most weight possible and risking injury. It's knowing how much stress can you take on, whether that's your body or your brain. And then endurance is how long can you maintain that stress? So how long can you go in that stress state? So whether that's running a marathon in a physical fitness perspective, or that's working long hours in a mental health, mental fitness perspective. What is that limit and those parameters where you need to take a break to maintain your endurance, to keep going? So it's not holding that weight forever and ever. It's holding that weight, knowing your limit, letting it down so you can rest, repair, and recover. And then you adapt and build that strength and endurance as you go. The same thing that goes for your muscles goes for your brain. How I break it down then into the 40 Fit Mental Fitness programming is that I have some workout sheets that I call it that really reflect and mirror that mental fitness model. Each of these sessions are about an hour, whether we're doing it as a group or an individual. Ideally as a group. Again, I love to facilitate and foster that social support system and that culture that we're working and living in. So individual work is really supplemental to the group work. So that's why I really look to work with organizations. So meeting people where they're at, really cultivating that environment and fostering that social support system that is so critical in our work environment. So the first level is what I call the fundamentals. So talking a bit about what we're talking about today with a little bit more depth and getting into the practices. There is a mental fitness assessment. So it's really a benchmark, a snapshot of where are people right now based on those levels of balance, flexibility, rest and recovery, strength and endurance. And then using that as a marker, kind of a mile marker as you go through the program to assess any progress being made or any challenges and areas of focus that individuals might need. So that's the fundamentals, kind of the introductory level. The intermediate level then is really based on what I call, I developed a sense inventory, SENC. So that's social, environmental, nutritional, and chemical, to really raise awareness about you as an individual. What is influencing you neurologically, neurochemically from a social, environmental, nutritional, and chemical perspective? So this worksheet really is about digging a little bit deeper, really becoming aware of What is influencing you, and what are areas, again, that you want to increase and focus on? What are things that you maybe want to limit and decrease to, again, optimize your neurology, optimize your brain health and mental function? That is you as an individual. That might be different from the person sitting next to you. Then the advanced level is taking all of that knowledge from your assessment, from understanding brain health and mental function, from your sense inventory, and applying that to a goal tracker and scorecard. So this is really where you identify what is maybe a major goal that you are looking to achieve or maintain. And this can be as broad or specific as you want. It could be just feeling better in the morning, feeling better each day, getting up with a healthier mindset, to maybe you're looking to change careers, or maybe you're trying to improve relationships. So whatever your kind of overall goal is, this is the level where we identify that and then start to break down micro goals. So what are those steps that, again, incrementally help you build and establish that neurological framework that you need to achieve that ultimate goal, so that you maintain your motivation and you feel and do your best. You don't want to feel discouraged. You don't want to feel burnt out, and you don't want to turn around and go the other way. You really want to look at what are those micro goals and those incremental steps that you can take to achieve your goal. So that's the advanced level. And then after that, it's really sustaining. So that's where we get into more individual sessions, but also understanding repetition and reinforcement is as critical with mental fitness as it is physical fitness. So you don't just go to the gym once and say, I'm good. You don't do these practices and do these sessions once and say you're good. These are lessons that really need to be repeated. Me as a mental fitness professional, I am constantly reminding myself of what I preach, so that I can practice it. And it's a constant need for reinforcement, for reminders, and for support to really maintain and sustain that brain health and neurological well-being throughout your life. Because stresses are going to come up. We're going to have to navigate change, and maybe unhealthy change. The change isn't always healthful. Really being able to identify what's healthful and knowing how to navigate that really requires constant support, constant reinforcement, constant repetition. And organizationally, just calling out the importance of really, again, mental fitness and focusing on brain health, mental function, and neurodiversity. So looking at the HR function, everything within HR is really about how are you managing those brains? How are you managing those people that are nervous systems at work, dealing with stress every day, inside and outside of work? So you're not just dealing with the stress that people experience at work. They're bringing in every stress that they have in their life that they've had from childhood into the work environment. And how are you really raising awareness about that and understanding what individuals need to thrive, to feel and do their best? Collectively, then, organizationally, how is everybody influencing each other? This is really the importance of cultivating that healthful work environment where everyone's kind of on the same playing field, like on the same page, and understanding themselves as much as they understand others. And it really starts by understanding ourselves. That allows us to then apply that knowledge to see others in new and more robust and informed ways. And then ultimately, individually, again, sustaining, raising awareness about all of those influences that are influencing you as an individual. So services range for anything from leadership training. I have a certification program for professionals to utilize the 40 Fit mental fitness model in practice for whoever you're serving, and trying to empower and promote mental fitness among your people. So there is a certification program, but my services also include lunch and learn sessions. So again, getting at the collective, getting at that group environment, shorter sessions, just getting people to just starting to understand and think about mental fitness, to group instruction. So that goes through the introductory, intermediate, and advanced level programs. And then to the individual. So again, supplementally, do they need more personal consultation? Do they need more one-on-one training? Just to address more personal issues that maybe they don't feel comfortable talking about in a group setting. And I also have an online on-demand version on my website. So that little computer that's there too. They're just video tutorials along with the downloadable workout sheets. but there's a lot of value in having a trainer. So consider me your mental fitness trainer. That really helps people along. But there is that supplemental online component for people who maybe just want to go on, even in between sessions, to do a little bit more work for themselves. That's kind of the service model and the approach that I have for mental fitness. Just again, raising awareness that every brain is as diverse as every body. We base our judgment on what we see and what we experience, what we hear. So whether that is, that's our perception of people. And ultimately, it's their behaviors, it's the manifestation of their thoughts and feelings and how they're expressed that impact us individually. And that's the social dynamic. So if we don't know what's going on under the skin of somebody, we can really take offense, and it can trigger our stress response if the other person is stressed for some reason. And that stress is infectious. And that's what we consider a toxic work environment, is when that stress just permeates through the air, through our energy, through our behaviors, through our words, through our actions. And that moral judgment can really impact and compound stress. So really understanding, again, the diversity of neurology within individuals is as important to understand as the diversity that we observe externally. And it's never one size fits all. Neurodiversity is a spectrum, everything from people on the autism spectrum to people with ADHD, and to understand that there is no blood test for any of these neurological conditions. They are all observation-based. So a lot of these terms that we've come up with to label people with different neurological conditions or states of being, it's really based on a collection of behaviors, a collection of symptoms, if you will, that allow people to identify, oh, that's ADHD. Oh, that seems like generalized anxiety. Oh, it sounds like you have depression. But there's also grief. There's also other brain health issues that can manifest in different mental health symptoms and mental health conditions. So with neurodiversity, it's almost, I almost approach it more, rather than getting at the labels and saying who is what, it's really understanding that we don't really know with 100% certainty a lot of times, especially when there's so much stigma around things. But to really understand that and realize, what does that individual need to optimize and thrive? So neurodiversity can be impacted by anything from genetics to body chemistry, blood flow, nutrition, environment, life experience, including trauma. Information that we consume absolutely can trigger stress, can impact our mental health, our neurological function, our relationships, so social support, especially from childhood through out our life. How are those impacting our neurology, our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors? Sleep is a huge one that detoxifies our system. Access to care. So again, looking at from an equity perspective, mental health care is really hard to afford and hard to find. So how can we be proactive and really focus on that fitness aspect of mental health versus waiting for a crisis to happen, and then we either are lacking the resources, we're lacking access, and we're lacking all of these support services that we need. And then abilities. So really looking at abilities, cognitive abilities, physical abilities, allowing people to work within their abilities, make the most of their abilities. That again, there should not be a requirement that we say you should have this ability, you should behave in this way, you should be able to perform in this way in order to receive care, in order to be understood, in order to be supported and guided in a healthful way. And differentiating fitness versus health. So again, I consider myself a fitness instructor, a fitness trainer. I don't call myself a coach. That's kind of a whole other field of professional guidance and health guidance. But this is really informational, educational, practice-based learning. So I consider myself a trainer, an instructor, like you would in the physical fitness realm. That's not the same as a clinician. So it makes sense in the physical health realm. We know when to go to our personal trainer, and we know when to go to the doctor. We know when to go to the gym, and we know when to go to the hospital. So very similarly, fitness is really about, again, proactive, preventive practices or healing practices that supplement your healthcare. So you do not have to be healthy to have fitness practices, to be fit, to be able to survive and thrive in your environment. Nor does the state of being healthy, going to the doctor, everything checks off on the health screening, but you're not feeling your best. You're not doing your best. You're really not thriving in life, even though all the health indicators checked off. That obviously being healthy can support your fitness abilities. But again, you can have a health condition and still focus on fitness and thrive in life. So they're related, but not necessarily dependent on the other. So it's really important to just understand that. And really diving into the brain, ultimately, we're trying to get at the behaviors, right? We're trying to influence and foster healthful behaviors, healthful outcomes. And we really have to understand what's influencing those from a neurological perspective, and then what's that process. So I kind of condense it down into the phrase perceive, believe, achieve. That in order to achieve something, we first need to perceive that it's possible, believe that we can do it, so that we take the necessary steps to get there. So really working backwards, what is influencing our perception of self, our perception of others? And are we using fear or hope as a motivator? These are very different neurochemical sensations, very different neurochemical motivators. And a lot of times in our stress-driven culture, we rely on the fear factor as a motivator versus hope that is really allows our parasympathetic nervous system to engage. That's the healing part of our nervous system. So being driven by fear can exacerbate health conditions. And that sense of hope is really what gives us the healing neurochemistry, whether we're dealing with a physical or mental condition that needs healing and repair. And to kind of get it at the cultural perspective, the DEI perspective, is really kind of the difference between adaptation and conformity. So adaptation is that healthful change that allows us to thrive. So practice, having support, really looking at the hope factor. What is in it for us? What is driving our motivation to adapt and change in a healthful way so that we can thrive? Versus conformity is really complying to a change to reduce risk. So this is stress-driven, this is fear-driven, this is you wanting to fit in to avoid any sort of punishment. And really, again, understanding the difference, there can be a very fine line depending on how we perceive it ourselves between adaptation and conformity. So adaptation really being hope-driven, being healthful outcomes-driven, and conformity being stress-driven, fear-driven, and really that compliance in order to avoid punishment. So adaptation being fueled again by the perception of possibility, this is the power of trust, hope, role modeling, anticipation of reward. So really perceiving that possibility that we can achieve something that allows us to take the necessary steps to get there. And that is what is really required in any fitness practice. What is driving our motivation to take care of ourselves and to take care of each other. Understanding the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. So within the mental fitness practices, the two parts of the brain that I really focus on and I educate people about is the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala, our unconscious nervous system, 90% of brain activity is unconscious. Keeping you breathing, keeping your heart going. It's your stress response. Those things that don't require conscious effort or intention to do. And that's 90% of our neurological activity, our brain activity. 90 to 95 actually on the higher end. So when we're talking about trusting our gut, following our heart, that is our unconscious nervous system we're talking about. And I should say too, the amygdala is with us from birth. So it's fully developed at birth and is with us until our last breath. Is the last part of our nervous system to die, actually. And the prefrontal cortex is about 5 to 10% of brain activity. This is our higher functioning conscious awareness and conscious intention. And that isn't fully developed until around the age of 25, give or take. But around there, that's our mature brain connected to creativity, comprehension, problem solving, critical thinking, emotional regulation, impulse control. All of those behaviors that we're trying to optimize and enforce through wellness programs, through DEI programs, through change management programs. This is the part of the brain that we're trying to activate and strengthen. But this part of the brain gets neurological signals after your unconscious nervous system. So if there is stress, your unconscious nervous system gets triggered first. And depending on your brain development, depending on your brain health, depending on the condition of your prefrontal cortex, do you have the ability to regulate that stress response back to your prefrontal cortex to optimize problem solving, to optimize critical thinking, to optimize comprehension, compassion, all of those amazing high functioning abilities that can be different for different people depending on that relationship between their nervous system, between their sympathetic nervous system and their central nervous system, between their unconscious nervous system and their prefrontal cortex, their conscious nervous system. And this is what really needs to be exercised and maintained and practiced and developed in a healthful way. When it's not, when there is a disparity between neurological balance, between the relationship between those parts of the brain, it can manifest in a bunch of unhealthful outcomes. So from anger to anxiety to depression. So again, neurochemically, neurologically, boiling it down, it really, a lot of mental health conditions and emotional health, behavioral health issues are related to that relationship between our unconscious nervous system and our amygdala that might be overactive, continually stressed, triggered by information, by our culture, by our environment, and the ability or the challenge of our prefrontal cortex to manage all of that unconscious stress and neurochemical energy in our system. Again, that's what we're here to raise awareness about and provide guidance and practices that can help manage that relationship in our nervous system from a neurochemical perspective. Understanding endorphins, serotonin, cortisol, and dopamine, those are big parts of the program as well. I won't get into it right now just for the sake of time, but understanding that this is not just about willpower. This isn't just about manifesting something into reality. This is really understanding at a microscopic level what's going on inside of us when it comes to all of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And that stress can really, again, help from health outcomes perspective. Cortisol can impact your skin, your immune system, your hormone levels, your bone density. Again, obviously your brain health, your heart health, your gut health, and your muscles. It's all interconnected. So this isn't just about talking about the brain, but it's talking about our nervous system and how it affects our entire system, our entire physiology, and the importance of really recognizing grief as a stress response. So we might, we know denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance is kind of the waves and phases of grief, but really, again, understanding them from a brain function and neurological health perspective, that this is really about our nervous system trying to adapt from a trauma, from an unhealthful change, or possibly even a challenging healthful change. Maybe we're moving, changing jobs, but we might experience, kids leaving the house, a change in a relationship, that we might experience grief in some ways, that it's still that neurological shift that can be a painful and difficult process, and that we need time and we need support and we need care in that process. That can be lifelong for some people. So really embracing the challenge. I don't use the term embrace change. I think that's highly toxic and unhealthy, because is the change healthful or is it unhealthful? We kind of have this black and white good versus evil paradigm, and that it's really about trying to understand what's healthful and what's not healthful. That can be different for different people. To differentiate healthful from unhealthful, I got ahead of myself there, to really optimize brain health. So again, this is not from a moral judgment, moral superiority perspective. This is about really optimizing your brain health and maintaining that mental function and motivation with healthful influence, rest, repetition, and reinforcement. All right, that's the end. I think we kind of hit the 30-minute mark, maybe a minute over. But if you are looking to promote mental health at work and looking to do it in a proactive, preventive way, and from a deeper way of connecting, again, diversity, equity, inclusion, wellness, change management, even risk management, conflict management. They're all stress related. They're all trying to manage the human condition and the human response to stress, to those stressful changes, to stressful information, stressful environments. And how do we navigate that in a healthful way? And so if you are looking for more support, guidance, resources, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about, what's within your capacity to take on a mental fitness program at work, or even individually, any training that you might need. I do have organizational packages that are kind of established quarterly, too, so we can kind of bundle it together, and figure out what's the best package for your organization and with where you're at. So feel free to reach out to me via email, via social media. Go to my website, 40fit.net. I appreciate you for being here today. Thank you so much. And again, reach out if you need anything. Otherwise, take care, find those healthful influences that you need to feel and do your best. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.